Steven Spielberg is one of cinema's most iconic directors. The guy has made Jaws, Close Encounters, E.T., Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, and Schindler's List in the same year. The guy has done pretty much everything you can and won everything you can. The guy is just undeniably one of the greatest to ever touch a camera. But where does a guy like this get his career even started? The guy invented blockbusters. He's done so much to help the world of cinema. So where did a guy like this even begin? And the answer to where his debut film happened spawns in none other than Playboy Magazine. Let's talk about that. What's up everybody, welcome to the channel. I am Nick and today we're going to be talking about Steven Spielberg's debut film Duel and how this story spawned out of Playboy Magazine and somehow got to Steven Spielberg. It is truly a wild ride how all of this happened, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. So Duel was a horror short story that was published in an April 1971 issue of Playboy Magazine, and Playboy is a very random place to have a horror short story inside of. You wouldn't think it would be that magazine, but Playboy wasn't just what you know it to be. Playboy did often have a lot of short stories to have authors put their work in there, so that wasn't all of what the magazine is, and Duel happened to be one of the stories in the April 1971 issue, and you just had this massive, just this 18-wheeler truck taking over the majority of the pages, and it's just this small column of story. And this was written by Richard Matheson, and Matheson wasn't just this random guy that got his story miraculously into an issue of Playboy Magazine. He was a very respected writer because he did a couple episodes for The Twilight Zone, which is one of the most acclaimed TV shows of all time, so he was very respected within the TV industry, but he had also done some other writing as well. So the guy was just known as a very good writer, and Steven Spielberg did have deep admiration for his work. The guy was a big Twilight Zone fan and ended up part of the Twilight Zone movie in the 1980s. He wrote part of the anthology movie there. So Spielberg had known about Matheson and was really excited about this idea, but we'll get into that part a little bit later. But Matheson originally got the inspiration for this idea when he was being tailgated on a two-lane highway with his friend back in California. Now the both of them are in the industry and they're just driving on this highway until this massive truck just starts following them on this highway, and it's not just a situation of they're going 10 over the speed limit and this pickup truck guy, or way bigger than a pickup truck, but this guy wants to go 20. It was not a situation like that. It wasn't a speed thing. The guy is just following them down this highway, just being really close, like a little too close, where if they had bumper stickers, then you probably couldn't read it. The guy was just tailgating them to very high extremes. And this was kind of freaking out Matheson and his friend, and they were thinking, okay, this is kind of weird, what's going on? Maybe we just need to get rid of him. The guy just keeps following them, and it was a pretty chilling experience for them, and eventually they were safe, but it's just the kind of thing where, or at first you're kind of thinking, okay, we're just gonna fall asleep, we're gonna laugh about it in the morning, then kind of just forget it as the week goes by. That's not what happened. Obviously he wrote a story about it, but what really made this day memorable was the day that they were being insanely tailgated like that was the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated back in 1963. So the day that you are being tailgated by this massive truck down a two-lane highway is the same day that the president dies. Yeah, that is going to be one of the top 10 most memorable days in your life for sure. So Matheson took that opportunity and he turned that horrifying tailgating into a short story, and this would be published in Playboy Magazine. Originally he didn't want it to be part of a short story though. He wanted to pitch this as different TV studios to maybe get this as an episode for a story, just get this concept out there and he'd write it out and everything, but no one was really taking it, so he eventually just gave up and decided, you know what, I'm making this a short story, and April 1971, it was published in none other than Playboy Magazine. So how did Steven Spielberg get that story? Was Steven Spielberg just sitting on the toilet taking a dump and he saw the story in Playboy? That is not what happened. I promise you that is not what happened. So Steven Spielberg's secretary, Nona Tyson, was able to find out that at ABC, for the Movie of the Week series that they had going on, ABC was going to adapt Duel and they were still searching for a director. So Nona Tyson had notified Steven Spielberg about it and told him, hey, maybe you should pitch yourself in for this thing and put your name in the conversation to direct Duel. And you're probably thinking, hold up, we're talking about Steven Spielberg's debut film. Why does this guy have a secretary already? And the answer to that is pretty simple. He had already been doing some TV work, he did some TV movies, and he had a rough cut ready for the pilot episode of the TV show Columbo, and that would become very important in him getting the role to direct Duel. So Steven Spielberg didn't just apply to himself to make Duel in the sense of, I'm just gonna tell them, hey, I'm Steven Spielberg, I'm gonna put my name in here. He sent the producer of Duel, George Eckstein, he sent Eckstein a rough cut of the soon-to-be released pilot of the TV show Columbo, and Eckstein was so impressed by this that he immediately was just like, yeah, this Steven Spielberg guy is going to direct Duel for ABC. And that is pretty much how it started. From Playboy Magazine to Steven Spielberg's desk, that is how Duel was going to become a feature-length TV movie on ABC. Now, even though Spielberg was very familiar with the story, the author, and the way he ended up getting the job was just a miraculous situation as a whole, the job wouldn't actually be as easy as Steven Spielberg thought it would be. The network told him, you only have 11 days to shoot what was originally a 70-minute movie. And whatever you're making, a short film or whatever it is, 11 days is not a lot of time to shoot something, especially at the caliber of what Duel was supposed to be. The budget wasn't big because TV is not what it looks like now. Nowadays, we're throwing like $65 million on Mandalorian episodes. Back then, TV was the lowest form of entertainment. It was kind of the lowest common denominator form at the time. So the budget wasn't very high for this thing, and that's why they would take a risk on someone at Steven Spielberg's level at this point in time. So even though the stakes were at the highest, Steven Spielberg, of course, wanted this to be good, and he only had 11 days to shoot a 70-minute movie. But in the end, even though with that time limit, Spielberg ended up having a really good time making it, and it ended up going really smooth. One of the things that was a big portion of this being easy was the fact that Dennis Weaver, who was the lead, Steven Spielberg already had deep admiration for Weaver's work in some Orson Welles films, but Dennis Weaver was essentially just in game mode for the whole 11 days. He was obviously an industry veteran, so he was already just excited to get into here and just knew exactly what to do. But he was basically Tom Brady with 2 minutes left on the line in the fourth quarter, game-winning drive for a Super Bowl win. That is what Dennis Weaver was in. He was in that Marty Supreme mindset, and so was Steven Spielberg. So these two just worked together so well to create this thing. But he also says, and Spielberg said, that another big part of why this turned out as good as it did was something called luck. And luck is obviously something that you want on your side, but I don't think it was all just luck. I think Steven Spielberg was obviously captivated by the story, but I just think it was his motivation and just the raw talent he had that really kind of was a lot of the luck to this. But the story is still just a massive truck tailgating Dennis Weaver, just chasing him, endlessly chasing him for the entire runtime, and we're having to see how is Dennis Weaver going to escape this and how is he going to essentially defeat this truck if he can. So that story is already horrifying, but Steven Spielberg wanted there to be something that symbolized like something. He wanted it to have a symbol to it and something that the truck represented to him, and what he ended up putting in there was bullying. Because through his childhood, teens, and adulthood, Steven Spielberg and a lot of his friends were bullied, and Spielberg saw this story as an opportunity to kind of shine light on what he and his friends went through, because he, in his own words, he anthropomorphized the truck, but didn't really focus on the driver of the truck. Because if you watch the movie, you can kind of see glimpses of what the driver, like you can see that there is a driver in the truck and it's not like this self-driving thing chasing them. You kind of see who it is, but there's no emphasis on this is the person wanting to out for vengeance. It's just a random truck that is endlessly chasing. So just having this massive force of evil constantly chasing down Dennis Weaver's character, it represented to something to Steven Spielberg about bullying that he really felt and brought him closer to the material. Now, the story of how this got made, from Playboy Magazine, a short story, to Steven Spielberg's desk, to showing a rough cut of a pilot to George Eckstein so that way Spielberg could even get hired to make this thing, that is a wild story and just a crazy sentence to even say, maybe overemphasizing how important Playboy was, but that is the source of where this story came from in like the first place. But what exactly is the reception of something like this? Because if you hear TV movie adapted on a short story that, though by Richard Matheson, was found in Playboy Magazine, this sounds like a very hit or miss kind of thing, but this absolutely hit and is truly hailed as one of the great American debut films by a director, and Spielberg just immediately put his name on the scene with this thing. Critics do say that Duel is a prime example of what a young director is capable of with very modest resources and time, and it's seen as one of the earliest examples of Steven Spielberg showcasing his skill at manipulating audience emotion, because if you watch Duel, the guy was able to instill so much fear and dread and just a lot of paranoia inside of the viewer with what he's able to pull off here with a very low budget and low expectations too, because you know it's just supposed to be a TV movie, which expectations weren't that low, but like what are people expecting from ABC Movie of the Week, right? Like they're not expecting Jaws from that. But Pauline Kael, who was a big critic at that time, even said that Steven Spielberg could be a new Howard Hawks with how rare that she thought his skill was. And because of how good the reception to Duel was, this TV movie on ABC ended up getting a theatrical expansion where from 74 minutes to 90 minutes, Steven Spielberg was able to expand the thing. And what he added were 2 scenes that he wanted to even be in the original film, and then a 3rd scene that George Eckstein wanted in the original film. So those 3 scenes were able to be thrown into the extended version of Duel to be the true 90-minute cut of the film, and then it was put into theaters and internationally as well, so that way more people could see it. So it had a decent theatrical run even after it was premiered on TV because people wanted to keep watching the movie and everything because of just how much they liked it. So there you have it. There is the story of how Steven Spielberg's debut film came to be. Duel is just a classic film. I would recommend watching it if you haven't, even if you love Steven Spielberg. Definitely give Duel a chance. It is definitely worth the time. But that is just truly an insane story to have for your debut film. From being chased on a 2-lane highway on the day that JFK was assassinated, to publishing the short story in Playboy Magazine, to showing your rough cut pilot of a TV show to George Eckstein to even get hired for the thing, have 11 days to shoot the film, and then have Dennis Weaver leading the thing, and then it ends up being so good that theaters want an expanded version of your TV movie. What an insane timeline to have for your debut film, and I don't think any other director would have a trajectory like that like Steven Spielberg. And of course, we know the story of what happened after. Sugarland Express was next, which was very well reviewed, but then after Sugarland Express, the year later, he puts out Jaws, which is pretty much the first iteration of a blockbuster film. Like, the dude has such an insane career and is just one of the coolest directors, in my opinion, to ever do it. And Duel is where a lot of this started. So thank you all for watching this video so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and tune in for more video essays in the future. Comment down below some thoughts for video essays you'd like me to do, and maybe some related to Christopher Nolan, because his movie's coming out soon with The Odyssey, so maybe some things about Nolan. But thank you all so much. Consider subscribing, please. Help out this channel, trying to get to 100. I'm rambling too much. Okay, see ya.